Good morning. I welcome you all in the third day of this FDP. Now we shall start sixth session, and the session will be chaired by the senior most professor of this department, Professor Debojyoti Bhattacharjee. I request Debojyoti Bhattacharjee to chair the session. Sir, please.
Thank you, Arshad. Welcome you all to this faculty development program. And this is the third day. And this faculty development program is organized by the Department of Physics, Tripura University. Now, in the first session, Dr. Anirban Guho, he is a faculty member of the Department of Physics, Tripura University, and he will deliver his lecture on nowcasting of severe weather phenomena with ground-based radar. And to speak something about Dr. Anirban Guho, he is working on lightning physics, global electric circuit, and ELF VLF propagation inside the Earth's ionosphere waveguide. He visited several countries and he spent as a postdoctoral fellow in Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, in USA. Also, he worked in Israel, and one of the important thing is that around 2 or 3 years ago, he was a member of the Antarctic expedition. And to his credit, he already published more than 50 papers in high reputed international journals, high impact factor international journals. He also, several scholars also awarded PhD degree working under his supervision. I am now requesting Dr. Anirban Guho to start his lecture. The title of the talk is Nowcasting of Severe Weather Phenomena with Ground-Based Radar. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, sir, for the nice introduction. Before I start my presentation, I would like to know whether my voice is audible, I am visible, and also my screen is visible.
Yes, it is visible. You just start it.
Okay, thank you. So, good morning to all of you. And this is a presentation which I decided to make based on the different sensor technologies. Those are available for sensing the atmosphere. And as you know, the program is mainly based on sensor technology. We must appreciate that the whole universe is basically a sensor. So our body is a sensor, our atmosphere is a sensor. Everywhere we look around is basically a sensor. But we need to sample that thing. Okay, so we need some technology. So we thought that we have gone through several topics on which we have seen the application of nanotechnology. Also, in the last session, in Colin Price told us about the satellite-based sensing technology. Okay, so now what I will concentrate on this particular lecture is basically on ground-based radar measurements, on how we can use that radar measurement for nowcasting. So before going to the radar measurements, actually, I will go a bit into the fundamental of atmospheric structures and then different sensors that we use in the ground, and then we'll go to the radar. First thing first, I would like to tell all the participants that you just sit relaxed. I am not going to give a research presentation. There will be no mathematical equation. There will be no research topic involved. This will be a popular type lecture. And many of the things you know already, these are all school books things maybe, but slowly I will go into some detail. And then at the final stage, what I will do, I will give some useful information that may someday become a life-saving tips for you. So please listen carefully. This is going to be a very easy to understand presentation. So I have organized the presentation in this way. I will first go to the structure of the Earth's atmosphere, which is a school book thing, and we will all know that you will enjoy that, whatever we are discussing. We'll go into ground-based instrumentation, because already Colin has covered the space-based instrumentation yesterday. Then I will go into the radar principles. Very simple, no radar equation, nothing, just visual representation, some animation. I will I will show you what is radar and how we can use the radar principle for atmospheric science. Then what is nowcasting? Okay, we call about forecasting, okay, but we will go into a detail of nowcasting, but not go into the technical detail. Then the Indian Weather Radar Network, and we will go into some live demo, then how we can use that radar network to enhance our decision-making capability. Before we come to our office, even we can log on to a website and come to know whether after 15 minutes or half an hour, what is going to happen. So it will become very good tool for decision-making criteria. All are free. You don't have to pay anything. Then we'll go for discussion. And most importantly, at the end of the talk, I will have an examination for 15 minutes. And those who attend this lecture carefully and listen to my voice, I believe that they will score 10 out of 10. So it is just listening to this presentation in a very relaxed manner. Please consider me as your colleague, not as a resource person at this time. Maybe we can discuss at that time also. So if we look at the Earth's atmosphere, basically you see there are many things that we can discuss on this particular picture. But I would like to take your attention on this height scale. You can see that here, this is basically a nonlinear scale, and it goes from the sea level from at the ground to the exosphere, which starts at around 1,000 kilometers. And there are several objects that you can see to give you an idea where an object can go as far as the altitude of the atmosphere is concerned. For example, say if you go to the right hand side of the scale, you see Mount Everest, which is almost 8 kilometers, more than 8 kilometers in height. And then you go to polar lights, which occur around 350 kilometers, and then you have meteors, different types of clouds, polar lights. So you have an idea actually what is the scale of the atmosphere as far as the height is concerned. Then you have the low Earth satellites where it sits. You can see the height range. You have the space shuttle, supersonic planes, the fighter planes. It can go it can go up to 65,000, 70,000 feet. So radio sonde, conventional aeroplanes, and also there is a plot. Okay, so this is basically a plot that gives the temperature profile. So if you look at the x-axis now, and this is basically a height profile of the temperature profile of the atmosphere. So if you go upwards, then the temperature decreases, and then in the stratosphere it increases, then in the mesosphere again decreases, and then it increases. Okay, so this is a very complex structure. Without going into the detail, if you are interested, we can discuss in detail. It is not a linear phenomenon. That means if we expect that the sun is emitting radiation and it will hit the surface and the secondary emission, the infrared emission will go out, we can expect that it will be a linear relation, but it is not, because there are dynamics inside the atmosphere. And these dynamics is very important. We need to sense that dynamics, okay? How we can sense that dynamics? Using various sensors. So we know nowadays so many applications are there in different sensors. So without wasting much time, we will go into different sensor things that we use at the ground level to sense the atmosphere. So before we go into the different meteorological instruments, I would like to say a few words. Let me go to the first, this slide again. You see, sensing the atmosphere is one thing, but forecasting is a different thing. So atmosphere is basically a chaotic medium. Okay, so in science, in a colloquial language, when we say that there is a chaos in the area, it is different from what we say when we say chaos in the atmospheric science. That means it is a highly nonlinear system, and it is highly dependent on the initial conditions. Okay, so if the initial conditions vary slightly, then what happens actually, these nonlinearities grow up, and the end results become highly different from depending on the different initial conditions. Okay, so this is a coined term by Lorentz in 1960s, who was working as a mathematician as well as scientist at MIT. So who coined that term, and we know the butterfly effect. So a butterfly can flap his wings at some part of the world and can create a cyclone in another part. So this is just a verbal analogy of how sensitive the atmosphere is to the initial conditions. Okay, so in order to have a better forecast and nowcast, we need to give better accurate initial conditions by measurements, which is very, very important. Measurements and data are finally the final words of science. So whatever theory we have, until we have proper measurements, accurate measurements, we cannot do any forecasting. So let us now go into the meteorological instruments that gives us that capability to measure that thing. So what I did actually, I created a different PDF. So I will quickly go through different meteorological instruments, and those are all ground based. Okay. And one of the instruments will be the radar that we will go into a big detail at the later part of this lecture. So what are the meteorological instruments? These are actually equipments used to sample the state of the atmosphere at a given time. Okay. So as I told you, that since the atmosphere is a chaotic system, it is very important to measure the state of the. Is there any question? Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
I think system is audible. Okay, thanks. So the state of the atmosphere we have to measure by different instruments. So I don't know whether this is clearly visible or not, but I will go into detail of each and everything a bit. So these are different ground-based instruments that we use to measure the state of the atmosphere, which is very important to give the initial condition, initial state of the nonlinear equations that were finally used to derive the forecasting or nowcasting capability. Okay. And a meteorological station is a facility either on land or sea with instruments and equipped for measuring such atmospheric conditions. Okay. So just relax and go through these different sensors. So there are many sensors in ground based that we are already familiar with. These are school book things. Okay. So anemometer. But I bet you that you will learn something from this particular slide, that you may know a name of a new instrument that you may not be aware of. Okay, so please be patient and see different instruments that we use for ground-based measurements of atmospheric states. So anemometer, okay, that is used for measuring the speed of the wind. Okay, so then we have barometer. Nothing to say. I believe that all of us who are present in this seminar all knows what is the purpose of a barometer. Ciliometer, okay. Some of you may know this, some of you may not. So please go through. So this is a device that uses a laser or other light source to determine the height of the cloud base and overall cloud thickness. Okay. So ciliometer is basically used for deriving the characteristics of different clouds, and it has an unit. Okay. Either in meters or pressure difference. Then dysdrometer. Okay. This dysdrometer is an instrument which is used for raindrop size distribution. Okay. Very important. Because you know the drop size of the rain tells us many things, and because of this pollution and global change and other thing, raindrop size changes. Even you can see in many rain drop size can become very large, and sometimes it can become very small. So there are telltale reasons why it happens. We don't have time for going into detail, but dysdrometer will give you that information, which is very important even for agriculture. It is very important information. Hygrometer, okay, so it measures the moisture content. Nephalometer, maybe new for someone of you. It is actually finally used for single scattering albedo of the aerosol particles. So it's basically suspended particles in the atmosphere we call aerosol within a certain range of diameters. So it uses some kind of technology. So this is nephalometer. Rain gauge, okay. I'm quickly going through because our main topic is radar. But in order to go to radar, we need to understand why we were going to radar actually. Okay. Very quickly, I will tell you. Then snow gauge. Snow gauge in our country, most of the country, if you go to the high altitude Himalayan region, then you can see that. But otherwise, in Agartala or in Kolkata or in southern parts of India, we don't experience snow. So we normally don't see snow gauge very often. But in high altitude or Antarctic or Arctic environment, or even in the high latitude countries like Canada or Northern European countries, we regularly see these kind of snow gauges. Solarimeter, okay, is a pyranometer that is a type of measuring a device for the direct and diffuse solar radiation. Okay, so it's very important to sense the sun. So to sense the sun, there are satellite-based instruments. There are ground-based instruments also. Solarimeter is basically a sensor that is a ground-based atmospheric instrument that constantly looks into the direct and diffuse radiations from the sun. Then we have thermometer. And I believe I don't have to define what a thermometer is, but this is one of the most important of any measurement. I would like to just give a bit more detail on this. You see, if you measure the temperature of your body, like say I have a thermometer here like this, say it is a pen, but if it is thermometer, we put it either here or in our armpit, okay? But we don't put like this, we don't hold it like this, okay? Why? There are certain reasons, because it has to come to the equilibrium state with your body temperature. If it doesn't, then it radiates and the mercury will not come to a particular point. So in the atmosphere also, what happens when you put a thermometer, if you don't put it in a proper position, there are ways. So you have to use a Stevenson screen and other thing. So if it is not placed in a proper position, what will happen? Even if the thermometer is accurate, its measurement will not be accurate. So that means if you have a sensor, which is a very, very sensitive and its resolution is very high, you have paid crores of money spending and for the maintenance of that particular sensor. But if you are not careful enough to handle that sensor properly, then the final outcome will be rubbish. So in science, actually, what I have seen in many labs, they procure many instruments, okay? But maintenance and calibration is very important, specifically for secondary calibration instruments, where we have to have a known source and calibrate it at a particular time interval. And for atmospheric science, I can tell you, this is a foremost criteria, okay? If we don't do that, what will happen? The calibration will drift, and slowly, even if the instrument is capable of giving us the accurate results, what will happen? It will drift. And those initial conditions to the nonlinear equations that I told you in the beginning of the talk, the chaotic systems, the final outcome of the forecast will be very, very different from what could be the accurate standard deviation. So we have to be very, very careful while we are measuring something in the atmosphere. That means the sensor is there, that is good, but we have to take care of where it is placed and whether it is accurately giving us the measurements. That's why I paused and I told a bit more on thermometer, because it is one of the most important, not only in atmospheric science, maybe everywhere we see a thermometer, which is basically a marvelous piece of technology. Several kinds of sensors are available nowadays. Even a presentation can be done, a book chapter, a book may be written on thermometers. So I should skip this discussion now and go to the next thing. Wind profiler. So it basically gives the wind speed and direction as various heights of the atmosphere. So when we talk about the wind speed, it is at the ground level, okay? But we need wind speeds at different levels. So for example, say if we are a pilot, you have to know what is the air speed, what is the ground speed, and also what is the wind speed relative to the aircraft, isn't it? Otherwise, it will not generate sufficient lift, and if it stalls, then what will happen? It will fall like a feather, okay? So what wind profiler gives us, the wind speed and direction at various heights of the atmosphere. So I have given one example, like an aeroplane, but there are many other scientific reasons and many other applications of wind profiler. Wind vane, it gives the direction of the wind. Pan evaporation, if you have not seen it, this is basically water and it evaporates under the ambient condition, and it gives many information like wet bulb temperature, relative humidity, many other things can be calculated from pan evaporation technique. Okay, so these things you will only see in the meteorological stations. Like we go to the Agartala airport. Actually, in our course curriculum, we have a field visit. I take the students to the Agartala airport where they see the meteorological stations and also the Doppler radar that we are going to discuss after some time. We become very happy and they become very happy. Why? Because there is no one to perish them. There is no one to basically cherish their achievements. Because what happens, one of the meteorologists told us one day that pilots are very good in playing the video games, but they fail in atmospheric science. That means when they take exams in the atmospheric science, they do not do well actually, because it's a very unpredictable system. Okay, you don't know what's going to happen the next, and we are trying to predict that. It's a very chaotic, multivariable open thermodynamic system. So they become very happy saying that, you know, when a plane gets delayed, we say that, oh, I'm missing my interview or missing something, but it is for your safety. Maybe the atmosphere is not correct, and this is one variable that the pilots, the air traffic controller, and the whole administration is, respects a lot the one parameter. So atmosphere is something that every takeoff and landing is different. Even in the aircraft is same, weight is same. So that's why if you want to get in touch, if you can get in touch with me, actually we can go together to the airport and see what these kind of things. And they also become very happy knowing that now you know the reason for the delay for the aircraft. Okay. So this is a sunshine recorder, and it's a very beautiful device. I don't know how many of you has seen this. It has a paper strip, and as the sun moves relative to the earth, and it has a convex mirror type of thing, so the paper slowly burns out and there are markings. Okay, and you can clearly see on a particular day, if you see the burn marks for say 10 hours, you can say it's a shiny day. If you say intermediate breaks, then it is intermediate sunshine. You can ask, oh, there are digital things are there, so why should you do that? Actually, there are limitations in everything. Digital technology, sometimes we feel that we have a smartphone and we have become smarter. Actually, smartness comes from your mind. It's not from the smartphone. You can use these smartphones for stupid ways, and you can use a tabletop to do great discoveries, isn't it? You don't need laptops for that. So sunshine recorder is such a device. When I see it first, I was fascinated by looking at how painstakingly atmospheric scientists had developed this sensor, and how beautifully we can track the radiation from the sun on a particular day. Storm glass. Okay, so this is also very interesting glass actually. This is a chemical reaction that happens that triggered by the pressure as the atmospheric pressure changes. So if the liquid in the glass is clear, then it is a bright and clear. If it is cloudy, or then small dots, small stars, crystal, and threads. So you can buy this online actually. If you can put this sensor in your room, just by looking at our visual perception is very important. Okay. A computer is not in a position till now to interpret the data the way that human mind can do. Ultimately, whatever a artificial intelligence and algorithm we are doing, it is the output of our brain. So I still believe that without the brain component, without your interpretation component, no output from a computer can give fruitful results. So this is a very beautiful class actually, but just by looking at, you can tell whether today there going to be a thunderstorm, or there will be a clear weather or not. They're very beautiful. You can buy it online if you want. Coniscope. So this is a scientific instrument to detect the dust particles. Okay, this is a sensor. Film mill. This is used to basically measure the our atmosphere is electrocuted. Okay, so but this is my field area of expertise, but that's why I don't want to go into detail. Okay, so but this is film mill, that is specialized instrument for measuring the strength of electric fields. I have a monitor behind me that continuously monitors the field, and there is a film mill placed in the top of the room that is running from 2011, almost 9 years without problem, and we record this and we get valuable information. Okay, anemoscope, this is also for direction of wind, but this is a bigger one. Thermoscope, this is for device shows the changes in temperature. Pyranometer, this is total amount of sunlight. Wind shock, you can see it in airports. Okay, any airport you go, you can see the wind shock is a cone-based shaped bag, so you can know which direction the wind is flowing. From a distance, if a pilot is trying to take off, so instead of looking at just at the instrument base, if the pilot looks at the wind stock, will come to know which direction, how much is the crosswind, and depending on the angle, he will come to know, okay, this is the crosswind that I can face, because these crosswinds can change very quickly, so that the ATC may not give the information via radio to the pilot. So this is a manual method, but very useful. That's why it is used in any airport. Okay, hail pads. We experience hail in Tripura, but not much. But there are places actually these hails actually destroy the agricultural products and other things. So it's important to have a measurement. And these impact zones, these are craters, okay, that we see on Moon, on Mars. Whatever craters you see, these are impacts created by craters. In fact, you know, over one of our instruments, like this field mill was hit by one hail one time, and there was a dip. It was solid aluminum, but there was a big dip. So when hail is going on, please don't go outside. Now, in this lecture, I am going to tell you when the hail can happen actually. So that even if you have an umbrella, please don't go out. If the hail comes, it will penetrate the umbrella and hit your head, and we can die. Okay, so please sit tight and listen to the end of the lecture. Then I am going to give you some tips how to determine when the hail will happen. So the psychrometer is basically the atmospheric humidity. It can use it. In fact, some psychrometer uses human hair. It is very sensitive to the atmospheric humidity. LiDAR is a very sensitive instrument, uses laser light, and it is light detection and ranging, the full form of LiDAR. And then all Skycam, this is another sensor. Weather balloon, it takes all the instruments up to a certain altitude. Radio sonde, it is a battery powered telemetry instrument. So it can be fixed in a weather balloon and go up, and you can carry different instruments there. So there are something ceiling projector is there, which is cloud searchlight. It's used to height of the base of the clouds also. And the Doppler radar, which is the topic of today's presentation. So now 10:32 actually. So from now I will go into the Doppler radar. So first 20-25 minutes we have spent on some basics scientific instrumentation. But this is the thing that we will now go, the Doppler radar, okay? So before going to the Doppler thing, I will go into the radar. And what is radar actually? This is radio detection and ranging. RA stands for radio, D for detection, and N for A, and R for ranging. Radio detection and ranging. And this kind of football, if you never seen anywhere, like if you go to any airport in India, like in Agartala also and in Kolkata, near about any airport, there will be a Doppler radar. Okay, this is for aviation and meteorological purpose. And this is a non-conducting enclosure just to protect the radar dome. This is a dome and the radar is inside. I'm going to show you some pictures. And this will be the main topic of our discussion. So why we go to the radar then? Why we go to the radar? Because you see, if I go to the first slide, I now give you the answer why we go to the radar. In a meteorological ground-based instrument, these are point measurements. Okay, point measurements means wherever you have the instrument, you have a measurement. But in radar, it depends on basically the radio wave. So over a huge area, say 200, 300, 500 kilometers, depending on the power output and the configuration of the radar, you can sample many important meteorological parameters on that particular area. That means number of radars for a certain region need not be that much of high. So if we have point measurement, if we have radar measurements, if we have balloon measurements, and also last day Colin has shown you the satellite based measurements, with all, we take that data, input data, we filter that, we try to make it as accurate as possible, we feed it into the algorithm, it comes up with a forecast, different levels of forecast. So now I believe that you understand how a sensor technology is using sampling the atmosphere and then giving us reliable forecast. So in our cell phone, actually we have forecast, isn't it? So if we go to the weather, then I click my phone, you immediately see what is going to happen in next 1 hour, how it is going to happen. How reliable is this? Is it reliable like a meteorological station gives or a pilot gets the weather forecast? In fact, a pilot gets a much better weather forecast than us because it's almost free service and there is no complex algorithm going on as complex as that when it goes to a space shuttle or something satellite launch station or something like that. Okay. So with that basic things, let me come back to my main presentation where I have covered the things and then I show you something. Let me now go to, let me see if it opens. Yeah, okay. So I have opened a link. Yeah, it's visible. So here you see the map of India along with some blue dots. Okay, these blue dots are different meteorological stations by Government of India installed under the Department of Space. So you see there are approximately, say, this number should be a bit higher, actually more than 2000. This is old map, but you see how it is distributed. So you see here in this area, because harsh area, mountainous area, there are very few stations, and there are stations I know, but those are not shown here because of national security reasons or whatever. I should not discuss this over open platform, but there are stations here, but those are not shown here. Okay, but these are the blue dots where you have those meteorological stations. So those are sensors there. And then, where is my presentation? Yeah, so yeah. So yeah, so another station I would like to show you. Let me just copy it. This is also another station network. This is from India Meteorological Department. So if we go to, yeah, so we can see the, no, yeah. So now you can see the different meteorological stations. Those are by India Meteorological Department. So these are also dots where we have these meteorological stations, but not all the radars. Okay. So just to give you an idea how in our country all these meteorological stations are distributed, I have shown this map to you. Okay. Now, let's proceed to the next slide. I am now going to show you an automatic weather station which is installed in Antarctica. Okay, so this automatic weather station, what it does actually, you see at the top there is a satellite antenna. Okay, this sends all the information collected from the sensors. Like this, you see snow height, temperature, humidity, wind speed, direction. There are many things. In our department we have an automatic weather station that measures 7 parameters. Okay. And here you can have many more other parameters. There is no limit that you can put sensors in automatic weather stations. And there are solar panels also, because there are no power there. So, and it sends the information to the satellite, and then people downloads it. Okay. So this is one installation in Antarctica. And I would like to show you another picture. This is basically an installation in Mount Everest. A National Geographic team went there in 2019. And there is a documentary. Okay, so if you search, you can search the documentary, how difficult it was to install this automatic weather station on Mount Everest, and they could not go to the target was go to the summit, the peak, but there were many other expedition members who were there. So they were in a queue, and the storm was coming, so they had to install it a few 100 feet below the peak in a small plateau region. I don't know the exact name, but I was thrilled by looking at, because in this team there are many scientists who never climbed up the mountain. Okay, in fact, I had a training in ITBP Auli on mountaineering before going to Antarctica, and we had to go for trekking for say 19,000, then come back to 15, and then 20, like that. It was with a 25 kg of load. It is very difficult for us, for the people who are scientists, to do such kind of thing. But I was amazed to see that in this expedition team, there are many people so much dedicated. They just to install a sensor, they dedicated their life and time to go to Mount Everest. Even many of them did not go to any mountain range ever. So hats off to them. So now we have a weather station in Mount Everest that is giving precise data so that the weather forecast can be there and the people can go there safely. Okay, so it's very interesting. This graph is more than 50,000 stations worldwide. Okay, so this is GOES surface data stations, and you cannot distinguish one from this in India, China, Europe, US, everywhere you can see, but scattered sensors are there in the oceanic regions. So this graph, this plot that I have just given you to give an idea how well sampled is almost plus minus 60 region. But if you go to the polar regions, if you look at the polar regions and the oceanic regions, those are not well sampled. We need more sensors here for better weather prediction. Okay. Anyway, so now what is forecast and nowcast? Okay. Now, before I go to the radar, it is very important to know, this diagram is complex. And while I was preparing this slide, I was thinking that I am putting this complex slide not to make things complicated, just to show you that how complicated it is. You don't have to understand what it is going on inside. So you have some external sources. You see, just remember that you have in the left hand side, you have the sources. Then it goes to various pre-processing system, and there are some models. Okay, and then comes the output. There are 4 components. Then you have data source, you have a processing system, you have some model, and then visualization and output comes. Okay, this is how a forecast works. Now the forecast levels are different. You can give a 6-hour forecast, 24-hour forecast, 36-hour forecast, 72-hour forecast. Even you can give beyond that. Okay, but as you go away from the forecast time, the accuracy of the forecast becomes lower. Reliability becomes lower and lower. Okay, but for a nowcast, normally nowcast is defined a current time forecast between 0 to 6 hours. That means when I am going to office, say I want to know when I will reach my office, is it going to rain? Now the thing is that the mobile phone, whatever thing they will give is on a larger region, and it may not rain in your way. Actually, you will not be able to tell precisely whether it is going to happen or not. So for a larger overview of what is going to happen in the next 6 hours, our mobile phone is okay. But if you want to have more detailed information, then we need nowcast. Okay, and there are various algorithms. So nowcast is basically a forecast, but it's a short term, accurate, more accurate than forecast is a nowcast, but it's more challenging. It's very difficult. But here, what we are going to nowcast? Severe weather, okay, but not using any computer simulation, nothing. We will use our eyes, one of our sensors. So in the whole FDP program, you have learned, and you will learn many sensors, but now I am going to give you an idea how we can use our eyes, one of the most important sensors, look at some data and tell, well, what is going to happen. And I can tell you many of my experience that I could save my life, and also I could take better decision just by training my eyes with those kind of things in the radar maps. And if you can do that, those are freely available. I think one day it will come very helpful to you. Coming to the topic, then radar. What is weather radar? Okay. So you see there is a radar dome here that I have already shown you. And inside the radar dome, there is a dish. Okay. And that dish actually rotates. So it rotates like it can go horizontally, and it can change its elevation also. Okay. So if you can see my video right now, so if I rotate like this, so I am rotating the radar in a fixed elevation. I am rotating the radar in a fixed elevation. Then I can change the elevation and change like this. Okay. So this is basically, there are motors here where I am pointing. That motor basically changes its elevation and azimuth and scans the whole. Okay. So this radar basically operates. These are general pictures in various frequency range. VHF, UH, L band, S band, C band, X, Ku. Okay. And in the most interestingly, the long weather forecast is used for S band. Then we can have C band. Okay. Military use radar is also there for detecting enemy aircraft. But you know, the radar is basically Second World War technology, but those are mainly used for detecting the enemy aircraft. But whatever comes in the military domain at the later time those sensors come for our rescue for scientific purpose. So radar is also a very useful tool for atmospheric weather. So mainly you see this S band, C band, these are mainly used for this long range weather forecasting. Okay, so the source is the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics. This is a well established organization which gives the radar frequency bands. So then let's go somewhere. Let's go to a link. I'm going to open a link in which no, this is not the link. I have copied it differently. Okay. Yeah. So I think this animation is self-explaining. So you have a dish where you see a pulse of electromagnetic wave in the different frequency bands, and if the wavelength is comparable to the object, okay, then it will have a finite cross section of scattering, and then this pulse, when it will go from here to here, it will carry a time sample, and when it reflects, some portion reflects, and then we know when the pulse was sent and when it was received. From this we can come to know the distance of the object. This is as simple as that, but radar principles can go as complex as you can imagine. And as I have promised you, I am not going to go into any radar equation and any such thing, because I am not an expert on radar. I should not say that, but the basic principle, if it is clear to you, I am sure that you will be able to understand. So this is basically how it works. And what is Doppler radar then? Then you know what is Doppler effect. If the object is moving, what will happen when this electromagnetic wave interact with this object? There will be a phase difference. That means there will be a shift in frequency in the received signal, depending on whether the object is coming towards or away from the radar. So if it is coming towards the radar, the relative frequency will increase. If it is going away from the radar, its relative frequency will decrease. Like that, if we can detect that phase difference, we can measure the speed and direction, that means the velocity of the object. This is the Doppler principle, okay? And it is used for atmospheric science also. Just to give you an idea how these radars, how much power the radars work actually, this is almost of the order of 450 kilowatts compared to 1 kilowatt of microwave energy in our microwave oven. So it is 500 times more at least than our microwave energy. So that means if we ever go into the radar dome, when it is operating, we will be cooked. That means if we go there, it is possible that we become cooked, okay? So when the radar is operating, no one can go inside the radar dome, okay? So for maintenance, people go there. So dual polarization radar, I'm coming very quickly. Before that, I would like to give you an idea about the radar reflectivity, because that is one of the important terms which can basically give you lots of ideas. So what is reflectivity? So when this electromagnetic wave reflects from a water vapor or thunderstorm or whatever is there in the atmosphere, if it is a foul weather, then you will see some red marks, okay? So you know where the position of red marks are there, you know there is a foul weather, okay? So if you know your position is here, so you know the foul weather is coming. I will show you how you can determine when the foul weather is going to come to you by measuring the velocity vector, okay? So these red portions are very, very dangerous portions. If you are just below that portion, you have to take shelter immediately inside home or a closed shelter. Otherwise, lightning may strike or hailstorm can occur, many things can happen. So this color is very important. And in order to interpret color, our eyes are very important, okay? And not only color, these colors have some reflectivity unit, which we call as dBz, okay? So what is dBz? I just, you can search actually, but yeah, so let me see if it opens. It will open. These links takes time, but anyway, by that time, let me go to, yeah. So Yeah, DBZ has opened. So you see, this is a unit for radar reflectivity. So, and without going into the detail of this unit, you just need to know this thing. You see, there is a scale 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, up to 65. Okay. And there is an interpretation. 5 means hardly noticeable, 65 means extreme and large hail. And also there is a color code. That is what you need actually. Okay, what you need then? So if you see 25, that means it is that maybe a light rain may be there. If you see 50, that means heavy rain will be there, and there will be lightning, also thunderstorm will be there. So if you see a red mark here, you see in the color bar, if I can zoom the color bar, okay, so I think it's not visible clearly. So I should go down to the main thing. So this color bar number and this interpretation is important. Anything greater than 45, anything in the yellow, orange or red zone is a warning. Okay, so this is a human interpretation. I believe that you'll be able to remember it. Okay, so DBZ is a unit for radar reflectivity, and the intensity interpretation is like this, so that we can interpret now the radar things. Okay, so now let's go to the dual polarization thing. Just after that, I will show you some live demonstrations. What is dual pole radar? You see, in a normal radar, when the electromagnetic wave bounces back, it doesn't detect the vertical and horizontal polarization. But in a dual polarization radar, what happens actually? It sends and receives signals in different polarizations. So when a raindrop starts falling, what happens? It gets elongated in the vertical direction because Earth's gravity. Okay, so its reflective characteristics, the phase, frequency, everything becomes different in the vertical direction compared to the horizontal direction. So whether it is a falling rain or it is something rainwater or water molecules that inside the cloud, a dual polarization radar can determine. It is a very, very useful Doppler radar. And dual polarization radar can be used to improve the precipitation estimates, leading to better flash flood detection, ability to give detection of aircraft icing conditions. Okay, aircraft icing is something is not that much of issue in many parts of India, but in the northern parts like in India-China border and other things, it's a very important thing. So aircraft icing, in order to detect that, we need the dual polarization radar. It is one of the very, very useful tool. Okay, so having understood these fundamental things, okay, what is a radar, what is dual pole, what is reflectivity and other thing, let's now proceed to example radar echoes, and then I will finish my lecture giving you some real life experience how you can detect that. So I have almost come to the close of my, though I am within time, so I believe I'll be able to finish it within time. We have some discussion time also, then for 5-10 minutes we can do that. You see, this is a sample radar echo. So you see, now you can tell me clearly, I am not able to see the chat box, so, but can anyone tell me in the chat box? I don't see the chat box, so I can go there. Where is the most, which color determine the most radar reflectivity region or the most dangerous region? Which color?
The central red region.
Yeah, I would like to know the color.
Red.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Thank you. So one participant has responded that just by looking at the radar echo, this is a sample, wherever you see the red, you know there are more convective region or dangerous. I am not quantitatively saying what is there, okay? But from a layman's point of view, color is important, okay? So that's why these colors give a representation of the region where the radar will give more convective region. So if you have red here, then you have see orange, that means the scale of the oranges is 1 order of magnitude less than, because it's a logarithm scale, and then yellow, and this blue and green regions are at the lower region. Okay, so now you have set your eyes. It is very important to train our eyes to detect where the danger is. I believe that all of you have followed this. Next, I am going to show you a cyclone which is detected by the Visakhapatnam radar, which is the India Meteorological Department radar. I'm coming to that network very soon, within 2 minutes. And you can see how the structure of the cyclone radar is located where? You see, radar is located where I am pointing my mouse. It is here. And radially outwards, you have concentric circles. So you have 100 kilometer, 200, 300, 400. So if you know the position of and latitude, longitude of the radar, you can easily determine your position and you can see where the cyclone is there. You can clearly see the eye region. You can see the rain band regions are there. You can also see these external rain band regions are there. So you can see, if from the satellite also you can get these kind of pictures, but the satellite pass depends. That means if the satellite is not over that particular region, you will not get the sample. Then you need to go to the geostationary. But if you have a radar, you can sample that particular region more effectively. In fact, satellite and radar both together can give us better results. So it is complementary to each other. Okay. So for the time being, since we are talking about radar, let us concentrate on radar echoes. So you can see the cyclone structure. Next, if you look at this just diagram, there are many parameters that we can determine where the regions are there which are more dangerous. Okay, but I would like to give you one example of squall line. What is squall line? It is the front end area of a thunderstorm where basically it's like a barrier that moves with a certain speed. Say if you are located here and if you know which speed it is coming, so you may have 15-20 minutes to avoid this storm. You can move your car away. So if you are going into such a thing, and if you have a radar echo and you see there is a squall line or something line is coming towards you, and you can get away with that, because when it hits really hard, and it doesn't give you warning. When it comes without warning, but people can know it well before. Because I can share one just small story. When I went to the Agartala airport many times, one time one meteorologist there told me that there was an pickle acharwala, what we call in Hindi. So person used to sell pickles in the open streets, and the meteorologist went to the airport and they detected that a squall line is coming, and I asked the shopkeeper to just wrap up the thing. Shopkeeper told that I see clear day, why should I do that? आपको मैं विश्वास नहीं करता हूँ, क्या कह रहा है आप? और वो 10 minutes के बाद what happened actually, everything went out. He went for lunch actually. When he came out and see his open shop is not there actually. So this is the power of radar. The meteorologist told the shopkeeper to get away all those things. He went for lunch, and after when he came, and everything was vanished. His business was gone actually. Okay, so that's why it is very important to understand and to identify what the squall lines are. So next slide, I'm going to give you an example of that, how in a radar image, you can see clearly the bow region, and it's a squall line region. So if you are something where here, it will come to you at a certain time and cross you. If you come to know about this at least 15-20 minutes before, I believe it is not only life-saving, even the property can be saved. If you are outdoor, if your children are playing, if you are driving in a road, then the fallen trees can be a big danger. Lightning may not be a danger at that time. If you have a radar screen in front of you, you can easily keep safety to yourself. Okay. So with that background, actually, I think now we are in a position to go to basically show you some real-time radar. Okay, so it is 11 a.m. Technically, I have 30 minutes, but it will not take 30 minutes. Okay, so this is the most interesting and important part of the presentation. So please follow me. So first, I go to a link, which is a US-based Doppler radar network. US is a country where they have more than 100 radars. In fact, these radars can be used by civil, but military and NOAA, this is NOAA side, but there are other radars. There are more than 300, 350 radars all over the country. Okay, and they have a very good weather forecast system. Not only on that, the people there are more aware of whatever the tools are available to them. Here the issue is, we use smartphones, that's fine, but how do we use our smartphones, whether we are aware that what are the tools are available to safeguard us? We are not aware. So one of the purpose of this presentation to make you aware of the sensor technology in atmospheric science that is already available in our country. I am coming to that. That can be helpful for you actually. So if we go to this radar.weather.gov in US, you can click any region. Say if I am in Massachusetts, so I will go here and I will simply click that particular dot, and then that dot will open, and they will give various kinds of radar reflectivity. Now there is no such thunderstorm going on, but you can go to different products there and you can see there. So if you are in US, so it is much simpler. You can also go to the archival data, which is free of cost. But here in India, archival data, I faced difficulty going into the archival data. The official process is very complex. You get it, but at least 10 minutes before the past data you can get actually. Okay, so now let us concentrate on our own country. Okay, let's go to a link which is IMD, which is India Meteorological Department. Now I am looking at the website of the Government of India Meteorological Department website. Okay, this is well known, and recently it has changed its domain to imd.gov.in to mawsam.imd.gov.in. It doesn't matter. You go to Google and click IMD and you will get it. Now there are many things. It is very useful and very good website. There are different apps also. Mawsam, Meghdoot, and there is Damini lightning app also. But this is not the topic of this. Now on the right panel, you will see three things: satellite, radar, and satellite with lightning. Okay. So if we click the satellite, then you will get the infrared, visible, water vapor, and different kinds of satellite imagery. And there are explanations also. Very good website. The Colin also covered it yesterday, but he covered it globally. Now we are covered. You can, if you are interested on India perspective, you can cover that. Okay. So, but because my lecture is based on the ground based, I will skip satellite and I will now go to, say, I will go to lightning. Okay, satellite with lightning. And now it is a live thing. That means you know where the lightnings are going on. I'm not going to any detail of lightning right now. Okay, but if you click here, we will come to know where the lightning is going on overlaid over the satellite map. Okay, and let us see if we can go to any radar installation and see whether also we can see enhanced DBZ. That means enhanced reflectivity, so that we can train our eyes to see whether lightning can happen or we can safeguard ourselves. So I see there in the coastal Odisha and the West Bengal region, there are some lightning going on at present. Okay, so let me now open the radar map. Mawsam. So let me open the radar map. So now it is the Delhi radar. But you see there are around 30 radars all over India, and I believe you can see the map. And in this map, all these pointers are basically a radar installation under Government of India, India Meteorological Department. So say I go to the Paradip. Okay, so if you have a computer in front of you, you can go with me. If you don't have, you can just click later time mawsam.imd.gov.in and you can go. So let me go to Paradip. Let me see what is the status of this radar actually. So it is live. So you see, the first parameter that we see here is basically now you can see. So you see, it's not exactly a squall line, but some development is taking place, but it has not gone into the red region. But there are some pockets. If I can zoom in, can anyone please confirm whether they can see the zoomed in version?
Yes,
Yes, we can.
Yeah, okay.
fine.
Yeah, okay. So if you look at the Paradip here, and you see around, this is 50 kilometer, this is 75 kilometer, and you see it's a white region. Okay, this small white region is where basically the lightning is happening. So the radar, if I will go to other sections and see whether I can show you some red, but if you keep on watching, you will see some red. If something is there, it updates every 10 minutes. So it is now 5:12. So it is coming 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12. Yeah, 10:42. 10:42 IST it has updated. So it is almost 15-20 minutes delayed because process time is there, but you will get it updated if the radar is operating. So you see some development is going on there in the Paradip. So let us now search, say, Agartala radar. Oh, by the way, before I go into the, I should explain one thing. This is basically the reflectivity as different heights, which we call as vertical profile of the reflectivity. And here you have heights. These heights go from, say, 1.5 kilometer to 13.6 kilometer for this particular image. And this is the height profile. That means whenever you see larger height, the lightning and other convective activity is much higher. So in this region and this region, you can just come to the coordinate here and you see height is of the order of 12 kilometer. Definitely it is going to be a more convective region. Now the question is whether it is going to hit Paradip or not. Okay, so from this vertical profile, I will just explain another one because there are accumulation of rain and other things are there. We don't have time, but if you have interest, you can go into that. It's very easy. You see, this is the velocity profile from the radar. That means at the 0.2 degree elevation of the radar, how much is the wind speed? So we know in the polar coordinate, if you go outwards, then it is positive. And if you come inwards, then it is treated as negative. It is a convention in physics. So we actually follow the physics convention. So if something is basically showing you yellow, that means it is in this range, say, mean velocity, you know what is like that. It is clearly written here. So it is 3 to 9 meter per second. This is the range. And it is going away from the radar. Why? Because this is radially outwards, and that is positive. That's why. Whereas these blue regions are basically coming towards. So we can tell that by looking at simple things that this system is slowly moving towards southwest to the northeast. Okay, from this simple vector velocity diagram, we can tell that. So if someone is sitting here near, so that they know, if they know the velocity here. So this is of the order of minus 27 to 21. That means the speed is you can convert it into kilometer per hour, and you can easily calculate when this system is going to hit you. But this is a past system. I should emphasize that this is a past system, and there are algorithms. But I am not going into algorithm. But simply looking at this velocity picture and the max z pictures, we can determine whether we are safe within a period of 15 to 20 minutes or half an hour. This is now casting without using any algorithm. Okay, so let us now go to Gopalpur. So okay, so if we go to Gopalpur, there are different kinds of radar. Some Vale radar is there, some Chinese radar there are different radars are there. But here also, yesterday when the first lecture was going on, there were some thunderstorms. I was getting very good reflectivity. Unfortunately today I don't have that, but you see some region is there white, it can develop to red, and you can go to the velocity diagram here also to determine which direction it will go after some time with respect to the Gopalpur radial thing. So if you just practice it, I mean to say, this is not a one-day thing. Okay, let me go to Nagpur. And you can search for yourself now. If you search this radar, Nagpur, we don't see any such reflectivity. Let me see. Because I don't know what is going on at present. This radar, we don't have anything. So I just want to Google search and show you some IMD radar wall line, say. Squall. Image. Okay, let me see if we have any past image. IMD radar image. Yeah. So we can go to images. You see, yeah. So I have a sample picture here, which we can see that how the development will look like when we have a squall line like that. So in IMD data currently, we don't have that kind of development. Should not take that much of time. Anyway, but here you can see how the squall line is coming towards you. So now we can understand the basic things of this radar nowcasting, and you can see, oh, here is a picture. Yeah. So you see what happens actually. Sometimes huge developments are there, and you can easily know. You see another picture. So you can train your eyes actually by going into this website, and you can train your eyes to just to know how you can interpret this radar reflectivity model. This is a paper, and you see in the paper how you see the development of this radar reflectivity. Okay, so the main website that you can go to the mosam.imd.gov.in, and you can search any of these radars after this lecture or in leisure time, wherever you are located in India. Now this is the Bhopal radar, and you see in the Bhopal some development is going on here, and you see reflectivity. That means rain is going to be there in Bhopal very soon. If someone is from Bhopal, you know that today will be the cloudy day and there will be rain. So by just looking at these things, what you can do, you can nowcast it yourself. And I try to keep this thing absolutely at the novice level, so that what happens actually, you don't feel bored and you can get some real life idea. And if you can use these websites and you can just nowcast the things, then I believe that it will be useful for not only for your certificate and FTP, but also for our well-being. So with that, I come to the close of my lecture. It is now 11:15, no 11:12 now. We can have a discussion, and I will also request the coordinator and organizer to share the link for the exam, so that by 11:30 we are finished with all the stuff. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor. It's a very interesting talk, and we really enjoyed it. And we learned a lot of things that can really helpful for our day-to-day life. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks, Anirban, for your nice presentation and very informative presentation. And now it is a question session. If anybody has any question,
you can post your question in the chat box if you want, or we have time for discussion. Let me see if we have. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yes, myself, Jitumani Kolita from Cotton University. I wish to know if there is any reliable mobile app which we can follow. If you can suggest something.
Well, there is an app which is partially it is free, but if you, I don't want to advertise, you can. There are some apps actually which you can download to get the radar maps, but those are commercial. So if I name anything, then it will be an advertisement for them. But you go to Play Store and you will see some apps are there which will give you the real live radar maps, but it's a paid service.
Okay.
So
thank you.
I do not advertise anything, which is paid.
Yes. I understood.
But if you go to IMD website, the Government of India website, that is completely free. That is completely free.
Yes. Okay. Thank you so much.
Welcome. So I have stopped sharing my screen. Let me see if there is any question in the chat box. Okay, so Ritona Punik.
okay, thanks, Anirban. Okay.
No, I have some. Sir, can you read the questions for me? There are questions in the chat box.
Despite Ritunova Bonik, despite of training such technologies advancement, why do weather forecast fail sometimes?
This is very interesting, and as atmospheric scientists, this is one question that we face every time, and we are very happy that we have this. Okay, failure is the pillar of success. We don't claim that we can give 100%. That's why we don't call it as prediction. You know, Ritunavo, I told you that it is an open thermodynamic system with a huge amount of parameters which are uncontrollable, and it is chaotic system. That means when we go out of the department, can you tell that what is going to happen to your life or my life? It is as difficult as that. Sometimes it may fail. Okay, so but have a look at the percentage of time that it fails. Do you expect that whether it will rain on in the region where you live, or there? I have seen rain happening only few yards away and not over my house. Actually, it is our models and experimental data is not as accurate as that. May not be, we will not have that accuracy. But as long as forecast is concerned, I can tell you that aviation sector, navigation, military things, and transportation, everything depends on weather forecast, and it works. More than 90% it works. Yes, it fails. I accept that it fails, but it is much better than before. And we will, maybe one day we can give more than that accuracy. So I accept the failure, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't work. Thanks.
Another question of the same type almost, that compared to the foreign countries, our weather reports are not that accurate. So what's the reason?
Yeah, that is true. That is true. The reason is we are still, you know, other countries means it is much better than other countries, but much less accurate than US or European countries. Fundamental reason, I can tell you openly, that it is the budget. That means our GDP, if you look at how much we spend on our GDPs and instrumentation and scientific investigation and its implementation at the society level, we'll be amazed. Okay, so I don't want to give the numbers. Okay, so we need to invest more on this, and with the forecast will definitely become comparable with other, and it is becoming much more accurate. But yes, there are lapse areas which are policy level decision, which I should not comment on at this presentation.
Okay, thank you, Anirban.
Thank you.
And now
Thank you.
Assessment is going on.
Yeah.
Okay. Assessment is going on. After assessment, the next session will be started just at 11:30.
Yeah.
It is
sure.
now 11:23. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Anirban.
Thank you. Thank you.